Hey everybody, welcome to our weekly Bible reading check-in. I'm Andrew, this is Mike, and we are reading the Bible twice in 2026, and we're challenging you to join us, and we're grateful that you're trying, that you're working with us to get through the text. We're talking about Psalms today.
Psalms. There's a lot of Psalms.
It's a lot of Psalms.
I do want to say, if you're not at the same schedule we're on, we understand.
Sure.
There were a lot of Psalms.
Yes.
There are 150 Psalms.
Yes. And maybe we'll say this just for housekeeping as well. We're going to talk about the whole book of Psalms today. If you're following our reading schedule exactly, you're going to pick up a few of those in next week's reading. Mm-hmm. That's fine, but we're just going to kind of use this as an all-encompassing conversation.
We had some last week, but we focused on Job because that was the bulk of the reading. Same thing here.
Yeah. So let's start with this question. How did your reading of the Psalms go? What did you think? What was your initial reaction to this reading?
Well, as most of you know, I am listening to them in my vehicle as I travel during the week, and I found it really difficult to stay with it because there's not a story. Pretty much every other book we've been reading, at least in some way, there's been a story, even kind of getting through some of that repetition in the law or the names, but there was a narrative. Psalms, there's no narrative. I mean, there's some format, but there's no narrative. So I found it, a lot of it, in just listening to it, it just kind of, honestly, it just kind of blended together, and it was really hard to, unless I was really paying attention to it, it was really hard to just sort of keep them all straight.
I agree. So I did some of both this week. I read some of them, and then I listened to a majority of them. And I will say, for me personally, Psalms is a book that I much prefer to read. And here's the other side of that for me, is this is an entirely different genre than we've been reading so far. Mm-hmm. Job was poetic in some ways, so there's some similarities with Job. But Psalms, we've been encouraging everybody to read quickly through the Bible.
Right.
And I think there's great value in that. And I think there's some value with that even in Psalms. But we're getting to a point in the Bible, a section of the Bible, where I really think these kinds of writings are intended to be read more slowly.
Yes.
And so I'm not saying you should slow down. You should keep up the pace with us as we work through this. But this is the kind of book that we're going to want to go back at some point and read slowly and just sit and meditate on it and think about deeply what it's saying. So it was hard to read quickly. And so if others are experiencing that, you're not alone in that.
I think that's why a lot of reading plans, well, typically there'll be some kind of, we're going to read kind of through the narrative, and then every day you might read a psalm or two, and you might read in the Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, that kind of thing, over the course of the whole year, the whole program, because they are actually designed to be meditated on.
Yeah.
So it was not as good of an experience as the rest of it's been so far.
Yeah.
In terms of just really sort of getting it.
Yeah. So last week, one of the things we sort of teased was the 5 books in the book of Psalms. Mm-hmm. And so if you haven't noticed that before, I hope it stuck out to you, because most Bibles, if not every Bible, will indicate as you're reading through it, some heading of some kind will say book 1, book 2, book 3. Mm-hmm. And so if you haven't noticed that before, we hope that we brought it to your attention, and let's talk about that. Why are there 5 books in Psalms?
It's not obvious.
It's not.
So part of the answer is it sort of replicates the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah, and then you have these 5 sections of Psalms. They do begin and end as you're reading them, as you said. There's kind of a statement, a doxology in between them all,
like a praise psalm. Yeah.
Right. There's something there, and then there's a sense in which, at least as I've read, that they kind of follow. In a really big picture sense, there is a kind of narrative flow. It's David, and then it's the nation, and then it's sort of like all good drama. The middle point's kind of low and kind of dark, and then so that's some of it.
Yeah, I think so. I think, when we're looking at the book of Psalms, we've got a lot of different writers. David writes most of the Psalms. We've also got guys like Asaph and the sons of Korah, and Moses gets
Moses
one, and
gets
Solomon
one.
gets one. You've got all
Yep.
these different authors, and maybe we'll say something about some of these guys in a minute if you have anything on them. But somebody had to sit down at some point and pull all of these poems together and put them in this book. And we're not told who did that. Maybe it was several people working together over a year. You know, we don't know. But somebody was pulling these poems together, and he clearly wanted us to think about it in these groups.
Right.
Like that it's not just a collection of 150 psalms, it's
Right.
5 groups of psalms.
But it's so kind of abstruse.
Yeah.
Abstruse?
Abstruse.
Is that a word?
I don't know.
Obtuse?
I don't know.
It's so that it's not at all clear to me. And I read a little bit about it, and we
Sure.
thought about it. We talked about it.
Sure.
It's just, it's not apparent. So I'm not sure if is that a cultural thing. Is that
I don't know.
is that something we're missing?
Well, I'll say this: there's some similarity to our hymn books, and I know I'm talking specifically about the hymn book we use here. So this may not be everybody may not
Right.
have a similar hymn book, but most hymn books you get, you can look and there's a table of contents, and they group psalms by kind. And that's not to say every psalm in that section is going to fit into that, but it's sort of a broad heading. And I think you see some of that in the Psalms. So like, for instance, one of the things that stuck out to me as I was reading the first, I don't know where it ended, the first 14 Psalms, 20 Psalms.
Somewhere in there.
It was a lot of David's on the run. David is crying out. People are oppressing David. David needs help. And so it was kind of like, oh, I'm seeing a common theme in these Psalms. And there were other pockets as well. Of course, the end of the book of Psalms is just full of praise. And so
Right.
there are
Right.
pockets of similar Psalms. And I think that's helpful to recognize as we read through it. Now, what that means, how we go and interpret that later on might be challenging, but that's an important starting point.
And there may be some elements to this of temple worship that we don't quite understand because we don't have the technical details. We know that David set the singing. God gave David all the information. David set up the singers and the players and all the things, and he wrote a bunch of the Psalms, and we know a bunch of those were used. And some of them say so, not all of them do. And so I suspect there's some of that maybe there's just a lack of information. Because we don't need it, per se.
Sure.
Of specifically how they ordered these things was they were playing these psalms and so on during the temple in the temple because they played them like every day and then all day and some days, and it was a lot. So I don't think they were playing the same 3 psalms. I don't think the whole time. So I suspect there's something to that too. We just don't have that level of detail to know minute to minute what they did.
Yeah, you're talking about temple worship, and no doubt several of these were used in temple worship. Speaking of sections of Psalms, there's another section late in the book of Psalms that are Psalms of Ascent, which is just a fascinating category to me.
Right.
Those are psalms that apparently were sung as the people would travel up to the temple, and they're called Psalms of Ascent.
Uplifting,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But, it's very fitting, right? Those kinds of things.
Yeah. So, pockets of psalms. There are pockets of meaning or kinds of psalms. I guess this would be my encouragement for people trying to read through psalms, trying to wrestle through it. Is recognize that there's more than just a superficial reading of psalms that can be done, and challenge yourself to try to put some pieces together. We don't have all those answers, but they're answers that I seek every time I read it. I try to pick up something new that I didn't see before.
Let me keep in mind, these are inspired. These are inspired works. They're preserved for a reason. And I think we're going to kind of talk about this. So maybe here's a good point.
Yeah.
These are sort of, if you think of the law, this is what the Torah, the 5 books, this is what God delivers to people. It's almost like the Psalms are the return. This is how people respond to that and react to that and react to life. And we saw some of that in Job.
Yeah.
We're going to see it differently in Proverbs, differently in Ecclesiastes. But here, it's almost much like Job. It's raw. Some of it's raw.
Yes.
It's hard to read. It's not just hard to read, but it's hard to reconcile how some of these people feel, David and others, with how we think we should feel and think right now as Christians. So it does give us some, a real taste of real people again responding to the circumstances of life.
Yeah. Very emotional. Very emotional. And sometimes it's positive emotion, and sometimes, like you're talking about, it's really negative emotion.
Yeah.
But it's all over the place. And there's a sense of reality to that, because that's the way we feel a lot of times. If you are feeling some emotion in life, there's a good chance there's a psalm that can help you express that.
Right. So we can take some comfort in that. We're not the only one feeling or thinking these things. That a lot of this has been expressed before. Obviously, we need to take care with those kinds of things, but it's there. God's interested in what we're thinking and what we're feeling.
Yeah.
And I think Psalms help show us that or demonstrate that. I think I know you've done, I think, some exercises with some of the younger people about writing some psalms and some different things.
Yeah, especially my brother Jonathan really worked on that. But
that's right.
yeah.
They wrote it, turned it into an actual hymn
Yeah.
that we've sung, right?
Yeah, which was something else I noticed. I'm just throwing this out there. How many psalms I almost started singing just because the words we use in our worship, they were just over and over again. It was that I noticed how many psalms I wanted to sing because I knew the words to some other tune, and then how many psalms I recognized as being prophetic about Jesus stuck out to me as well.
That's obviously a huge piece of when you're reading these.
Yeah.
Is how many do stand out. A few of them are referred to in the New Testament.
Right.
But just how many. And that from this point on, in our reading in general, when we get through the Old Testament, we're going to see more and more and more of this forward pointing to Jesus.
Yeah.
But it doesn't start here, but it definitely kind of picks up the pace in here.
For sure. Well, maybe we just pick out a few psalms that we think are interesting and say something about them.
Okay.
I'll tell you, this may be a gimme, but I think Psalm 1 and Psalm 2 are some of the best psalms in the whole book, and maybe it's just because I've read them more than the others.
They are the entry psalm. They're like
the
gateway drug of psalms. They are amazing.
They are, and they're so rich. And one of the things I love about those first two psalms is that I think they drive the rest of the book. The themes that are introduced in those psalms are meant to sort of be the guide for the rest. So, in particular, the first psalm teaches us to be like the person who's planted by streams of water, and the way that he's planted by streams of water is by devotion to the Word of God, by meditating on it, by thinking on it. And so it's sort of this invitation as we open this book, like if you want to be like this guy in Psalm 1, then dive into this book of Psalms and the law and other inspired writings, no doubt, but dive into the Psalms and meditate on them and think on them. And then Psalm 2 is sort of the other important thing I see in Psalms, which is God has a king, and you better be loyal to him.
Listen.
Yeah. So those two ideas for me drive a lot of what the content of the book of Psalms is about. And I love those two.
That's great. That Psalm 2, right? The rod of iron is
Yes.
going to dash all the kingdom into pieces. That's sometimes hard to read. It's hard to sort of fathom. People don't want to see Jesus as that king, but he is, and that will happen. And again, David being a king, and the psalmist would have, most of them anyway, would have recognized the king, the other psalmists, and so maybe to us, king again is a bad word, but he's in charge.
Yeah.
And so that's who David's kind of imaging himself, right? David's the almost not prototype, the type of Jesus. We've talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
And then now he's praising God and he's looking forward and he's reminding everyone, and he's not talking about himself here, I don't think. Maybe one layer. But,
yeah.
But
there's something more meaningful here. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about you? What psalm stuck out to you, or?
Well, I mean, you can't ignore. There's several that are famous.
Sure,
right?
sure.
I always go back to Psalm 22, the one Jesus refers to on the cross.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
He quotes one line of it.
quotes one line.
But it's the first line.
Is why have you forsaken me? Is he referring to the whole psalm? And again, this feeling of brokenness and disenfranchisement and whatever. But then the end of the psalm, like almost every psalm, it may start off sounding really terrible and really faithless and really almost complainy. But then by the end, almost every psalm, the psalmist says, but I know God's got it. Everything's in God's hands. It'll be fine. And so even Psalm 22, reminds us of that, no matter how bad things may look. I mean, I know there's a lot of debate, right? Did God really forsake Jesus on the cross? Was Jesus quoting that to mean that, or was he?
Yeah.
Don't want to get into that.
Sure.
But that psalm reminds us that God's in control.
Yeah.
And then the very next one, Psalm 23, the one
That's
everybody knows.
kind of famous.
That's kind of famous. That gets read at probably every funeral. Not really sure that's what the psalm's actually about. But again, it's about God's care and so on. Psalm 119, I guess, the really long one, the acrostic.
Yeah.
That one reminds us, your word is a lamp to my feet. Talk
Yep.
about a psalm that's generated a lot of songs
Yes.
and hymns in Psalm 119. There's a lot of these great phrases in there.
Psalm 119, I think has the distinction of being the longest chapter in the Bible.
I believe so.
But Psalm 117, its little cousin, doesn't get nearly as much love. The shortest chapter in the Bible, or one of the shortest anyway. It's a very short psalm.
I mean, there's a handful of others. Psalm 51, right?
Yeah.
David's Psalm of Repentance. Psalm 90, Moses' Psalm. This is kind of stands out, but a lot of them are very, very similar, right? There's a lot of songs, kind of like our songbook, our hymn book.
Sure.
There's a sort of collage of ideas that you might pray or sing, and some of these psalms are prayers, some are songs. Those, I think, can be pretty interchangeable. I was struck, talking about songs, by how many lines are kind of pulled out of a psalm, and then we have a song about it. But if you kind of read the next line in the psalm, it kind of takes this other direction.
Yeah.
From where maybe the song's going.
Somebody resonated with one line. Yeah.
But that's what we call poetic license.
Sure.
I mean, there's too many to talk about. There's 150
There's a
songs.
lot of
I don't
them.
know all of them that well as I do the ones we've talked about. There's a few more, but
Yeah. Psalm 19 is one of my favorites. We sing that one here from time to time, talking about the nature of God.
Right.
And, the nature that he's created is what I mean by that. And then the law of God. There's a host of just beautiful songs. Let me bring something up, and we
okay, let's have it.
all of the songs we've mentioned. Well, I mean, there have been some psalms of repentance. We mentioned Psalm 22, but most of the psalms that we remember, that we memorize, that we sing, that we like to talk about, are very happy and uplifting. But there are some really we hinted at some of the dark songs. There's a whole category of psalms that are troubling, not just because they're depressing, but because they seem antithetical to what we should be doing as Christians.
Right.
And I'm talking about there's this term. I think we might have even mentioned it last week. There's these imprecatory psalms, and so like one of the best examples. I don't remember the number of the psalm right off the top of my head, but they're in Babylon, and the psalmist is saying that they're asking us to sing and dance, and we don't want to sing and dance because we're in captivity, and I just wish that God would dash their children's head against rocks.
Right.
And you look at that and you think, yeah. Do you have any, what do we do with those? Do you have insight on that?
Probably nothing, earth-shattering. But
Okay.
remember where the people are. They've been, in that case, they've been sent into captivity. David will have several psalms like that. Just I wish you would destroy my enemies, and they're causing me all this grief and everything. But I think you have to just sort of take that from the times, the fact that these people live with violence in a way that you and I don't. And they have literal enemies at their door all the time. And then, so in David's case, he's got Saul as an enemy. He's got the Philistines and all these other people. And so I think some of that is there comes a point when I'm just done. And I'm just sort of like, God, I need you to handle it. I can't handle it anymore. I don't think we need to read that and say, well, we should be wishing everybody
we should dash their children's
Yeah.
heads, and that it's the idea. The people there were in captivity. Things were very difficult. Now that was of their own making, of course.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, God, what do we do?
Yeah. I like something you said there, I think resonates with me. The idea that they are giving this situation over to God. It would be possible for David in many circumstances, maybe not every circumstance. David, at certain points in his life, had an army at his disposal. He could have gone and taken out his own enemies. But there's something to be said for David expressing his desires and letting God do what God is willing to do or unwilling to do, but leaving it in God's hands. I think there's maybe a lesson in that in some of those hard psalms for us.
But this stands like the challenge is love your enemy, and
right
the commands we have from the Lord. Honestly, that's not any different. They were supposed to love their enemies too. Like that's something that I think everyone doesn't, not necessarily everyone fully appreciates. Like that, those types of commands didn't change. That's not a new thing with Jesus. That's always been how God read the law. I mean, we read the law a few weeks ago, and it may have escaped your notice that there's all kinds of laws about taking care of enemies, even slaves. Slavery, is a difficult subject, but it was part of life. That's another one of those kind of things. Just there's a part of life that they had to deal with that we probably don't, and so. They had to be able to express themselves and do these kind of things, and so we read that kind of stuff and we go, wow, man, that's really hard. So
those are challenging questions that come up in Psalms, and so I don't know if y'all noticed those things as y'all were reading some of those challenging Psalms, but it's worth wrestling with.
And most of them, though, again, they kind of come back around. Like they seem really awful, but they end in this sort of statement of faith. That's most of the Psalms seem to, no matter how crazy or harsh they get, much like Job, right? I wish I had never been born. I wish that day had never been.
Sure.
All these kind of things. He's not committing suicide, but he's just saying, look, things are really terrible. I wish they were different. Why don't you do something, or can you do something? But don't we feel that way sometimes?
Sure.
And I think this maybe helps us to not be so reluctant to just lay it on God. When Peter writes, cast your cares on him, for he cares for you, isn't that what he's talking about?
Yeah.
That kind of thing, when things are difficult.
Yeah. So I'd like to talk a little bit about maybe what we do with these psalms, not these challenging psalms in particular, but just like how do we use the psalms in this book, and the segue for that, one reason I kind of thought to move there was because I think there's a lesson that we can learn even in those challenging psalms, that it is okay to express what you're feeling to God.
Yes.
And the people in Psalms, the writers express some really dark feelings at times, but it seems from this book that God wants us to approach him about that and give, we sometimes talk about giving things over to God. I think that's part of what that means is being open with God about what we're going through and what we're feeling about it.
So here's a philosophical question that goes along with that.
All right.
God does not need to hear that.
Oh, sure.
Would you agree? He knows.
Sure.
So to me, then that points back to us that we need to express these things and say these things. It's therapy, right?
You just turned philosophy into psychology real quick.
Just like that, and I didn't even bring up Russian literature this time.
There you go.
but I mean, that's how I'm looking at it. Like, this isn't for God's benefit because he doesn't know. This is for my benefit or your benefit, our benefit, to one, get these things off our chest, because I believe that's something that people need to do.
Sure.
In a way that's not gonna, doing it to God is not gonna impact you. It's not gonna influence you. If I complain to God or I have those really strong feelings, you're not gonna go, well, Mike's not faithful, or it's between me and God. Now again, some of these psalms are more public, but I think there's that. I think prayer, just in general, because that's what a lot of these are, and worship songs, they just make us think.
Yeah.
So we start doing that. We start running through our feelings and our thoughts. It forces us to, especially if we say them, we articulate them, it makes us think about them and what's really going on. So I think that's, again, it's part of, I think that I have this belief that prayer and those kind of things are powerful and effective, but a lot of it is, it's bringing those things to the front of our minds. We're now thinking about it, we're considering it. And so, why am I in that difficult situation? What is going on here? Is there something that can be done? Should I make different choices? Is it something that I really can only leave in God's hands? That sort of thing.
Yeah. It brings it to our own attention, but also I think keeps present in our mind the reality of God in that situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the Thanksgiving Psalms are the same way, right? It's Thanksgiving songs, Thanksgiving prayers. What are we doing? We're thanking God. We're putting God where he belongs.
And that's helpful for us to remember that we need to be thankful and the things that we are thankful for. Probably the songs of praise are the same way. All of these, that there's an element of it is good for us to express these things.
I think so.
To God.
I think so.
So what do you think? What do you think about praying the Psalms? Is that a practice that is worthwhile? Like just taking a psalm and applying it to our situation. Have you ever done that, or have you ever seen people do that?
I've done it, not as a rule.
Sure.
But I've done it. I've tried it. It's interesting. It's sort of like taking the Lord's Prayer and kind of really going through it, not using it as a repetition. I think a lot of the Psalms, why not? Think about the feelings that the psalmist is going through. How is that? How am I similar? How am I different? I think there's value in that. I mean, we sing them. Why not pray them? I don't think there's a lot of difference between the two.
I think your distinction, we sometimes talk about vain repetition. That's the word that Jesus used.
Right.
It's not like we could use these as some kind of incantation.
Right.
But if we can make the thoughts of the inspired writers our own thoughts, and maybe even word them in the ideas present in the Psalms in our own words, maybe there's value in that.
I mean, there might be value in rewriting them in your own language.
Yeah. The way you talk.
The way you speak, the way you think. This is poetic, most of it.
Sure.
I don't think we have the time to really delve into Hebrew poetry, but
we
Hebrew
could
poetry is
dive.
real different. It's, American or English poetry is a lot of it's about rhyme. I know there's more to it. I am not a poet and all that, but there's parallelism of thoughts and imagery, and there's all this great stuff in there. And so take that, put it in your own words. That seems like that would be. I've done that a few times, like in a Bible class where we kind of work through a few Psalms, and we've done that kind of thing. I think that would be very helpful.
Very good. Anything else on the Psalms?
Just keep at them. There's a lot of I think, like you said at the beginning, Psalms, probably Job to a certain extent, but Psalms, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes definitely require us to slow down and really meditate. I mean, Psalms are meditations. Prayer, this is why it works. Prayers are meditations. Songs are meditations in their own way. All of them are very, very similar.
And all we mean by meditation is stopping and pausing and dwelling on it. Dwelling on the words, letting them fill our mind and sort of seep into who we are.
There's definite benefit to taking a psalm or any passage of scripture, but Psalms here, and just read it several times.
Yes.
Read it several times throughout a day or several times throughout a week. Again, not what we're doing in this Bible reading plan.
Yep.
But maybe we'll do it in another one later next year or something. But there's something to be said for just letting it. I don't know about you, but my brain works a lot better on stuff like that when I'm not really super hard thinking about things like that. So if it'll kind of roll around in this thing I call a brain, and then I'm doing something else, but it's on my mind, and then something will strike me.
Yeah.
An idea, a connection.
Yeah. Okay, so your advice is slow down, meditate on the Psalms. That is not what we're doing next week.
No. But how about this, just for our viewers?
Okay.
Pick a psalm outside of our reading. Just pick a psalm and stick with it for a week or two at a time. Just read the same psalm a couple times a day.
Yeah.
Most of them are pretty short. Pick a short one.
Yeah.
And just dwell on it for a week or two. Just see where that gets you.
Yeah. That'd be a good exercise. And you might find that that's what you want to do next time you go through the Psalms, is just go more deliberately, more slowly. Now, that said, we're going to do Proverbs next week and Ecclesiastes. So let's just say...
They're much shorter.
Ecclesiastes is shorter. Well, much shorter than Psalms. Much shorter than Psalms.
Everything's shorter than Psalms.
Everything's shorter than Psalms. Fun fact, Psalms is not the longest book in the Bible. Did you know that?
No, it's got to be, what, Isaiah?
Jeremiah.
Oh, really?
Jeremiah. I think by word count. Okay. Now, y'all are welcome to fact check me on that, but last I looked, that was what
I would have picked Isaiah.
Jeremiah. So anyway, it could be worse. We could be reading Jeremiah.
So these Proverbs is great.
Yes.
Ecclesiastes does have a little bit more of a kind of a format.
Yeah,
Psalms
it's
or
not
Proverbs kind of does.
It's not a story, but there's a logic to
kind
it.
Of a, yeah. Proverbs has some of that, but especially when you get to the middle and toward the end, it kind of just becomes a bunch of those kind of sayings. So that was I've listened to some of that too so far. I'm a little bit ahead there.
Okay.
And it was also difficult to just kind of like grab hold of them as I'm driving, and it's like 2 lines or 3 lines or 4 lines, and then the next and the next and the next.
Yeah.
The first part about wisdom. And there's kind of a progression there. That one sort of followed, and it was easy to follow.
Yeah, I love the book of Proverbs. The first 9 chapters is all poetry, but there is a story in the first 9 chapters, and if you can pick it out, I want to kind of challenge you to think in the first 9 chapters of Proverbs about what that story might be. But then once you get to chapter 10 and you get these short sayings, if you're supposed to sit and think about a psalm, Proverbs is even more so. You're supposed to just read 1 line or 2 lines and just think about it.
And wrestle with it.
Yeah. So, again, we're going to challenge you to read quickly through Proverbs. And again, I'm going to challenge you to try to find maybe groups of Proverbs that work together. But just know as you're reading, if you're just saying, I'm not getting this, know that this is going to be similar to Psalms.
Right.
You should probably go back later and read it more slowly. But for now, we're going to invite you to keep up with us and go through it quickly. We think there's value in that as well.
Here's a pitch. I'm going to be teaching Proverbs in the young people's class, but you don't have to be young to be in that class if you want. We'll make room for you, no matter how old you are, if you really just want to study Psalms with us.
Proverbs
with us.
Well,
Proverbs.
We'll get Mike straight on what he's teaching here in a minute.
One of these days. But seriously, like if you're a member here or you want to come visit with us, that's one of the classes we're going to have next trimester, which I'm still trying to figure out
next trimester
how that works.
We divide the year into 3. Anyway.
And can I plug? I'm doing Psalm 23 in the big auditorium class.
Yeah, we've got a lot of poetry coming up.
Entire trimester.
Yeah,
so
1 psalm for 4 months. So
yeah, it's gonna be tricky.
We've got a lot of poetry coming up in some of our studies, and so obviously we think there's a lot of value in this. We think there's a lot of value in reading and studying this poetic section.
I think most people maybe are familiar with like some of the Old Testament history, but probably Psalms and Proverbs is maybe where they're more familiar, where they've dwelt the most people, if they have any sort of passing familiarity with the Old Testament. Something about those, because it resonates, because we love the one-liners. We like fortune cookies. We like calendars, and Proverbs especially makes sort of perfect fodder for that. But that's not what it all is, right?
Yeah.
It's way, way more than that.
Very good. All right. Well, let's end our discussion there, if that's good with you. We want to encourage you, like the video, like our channel, subscribe to it, all of that good stuff. And if you find these check-ins valuable, pass them on to your friend. Share it. Let them know that you're reading the Bible and you'd love for them to read it with you. Let them know that they can pick up right where we're at. They can pick up in Proverbs with us. They can pick up in Ecclesiastes with us and just keep going. But until next time, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.